Hello,
Very good.
Christine. Did you just
Hello.
hear the lady say recording in progress?
I did,
I
and I
did.
had to accept it.
Well,
But
we
I
are
know.
recording, and we are here on YouTube on the Pointing It Out podcast channel. And my name is Megan Holmes. For those people who have just started joining us here on the podcast, I'm sitting at my store right outside of the city of St. Louis, Missouri. It's called the Needlepoint Clubhouse. And my friend Melissa McLeod, who owns the Wool and the Floss in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, and I take turns finding very interesting and fun people to talk to about the needlepoint industry. And so today we have my friend Kristine Kingston. Hi, Kristine.
Hi, Megan. I'm excited to be here.
Good.
Kind of fun.
So I just let people know that I'm here in St. Louis. Tell us where you're actually joining us from.
I am joining you from the about 100 feet from the beach on the Atlantic Ocean, right at the Delaware and Maryland state line.
Delaware and Maryland, a place I've never been.
You'll have to come visit.
I would love to.
And so you and Melissa can come out and we can have a little fun up at Patty's shop in Rehoboth.
Ooh, so Christine's referring to our friend Patty Hoffman, who owns Stitch Stash,
Yes.
Who her first store was in Rehoboth Beach, right?
Rehoboth Beach. Yep, about 20 minutes north of me.
Awesome. And so is that kind of your local needlepoint store? Is that what you would say?
Yeah, that's probably the one I go to. It's the only one I really go to on a regular basis because it's the only one near me.
So when you are not at the beach,
I'm not at the beach. I am in northern Baltimore.
And so what
north of the city.
What would be your closest shop to there? Still Patty's?
The Stitching Post in Catonsville is close. They are they're a combination of cross stitch and needlepoint. So they have a wide variety of crossover threads, but they don't carry a full line of my favorite Splendor.
Ooh, I love Splendor too. It's so funny.
That or Laurie at Waste Knot is also close, but Patty's a one-day shipping close to me. So
I like that. I like
he
that.
drops it in the mail and I have it the next day.
I love it.
I'm here 6 months out of the year. I make sure to take home what I think I might need. I do a big purchase before I leave.
That's a good idea. So let's dial back and explain to people why, in fact, you are interested in Splendor and all things needlepoint. So why don't you tell? So first of all, I should say, Kristine is the lead designer and artist.
The only designer
in the Kristine Kingston Designs needlepoint line. And you do you do some distributing on your own? Or is it all through the Chris Lewis distributing?
It's a little bit of both, but not. It's mostly Chris. I paint when things are out of stock and someone desperately needs it. I do a lot of custom work with a lot of different shops, and that is all me. I do a lot of custom work.
So for people who may not have ever heard the name Chris Lewis Distributing, that actually sort of makes sense that you might not have heard of that, because what Chris is sort of like a distribution center for a group.
He's my behind the scenes work husband
of artists. So what's nice about having a distributor is that Kristine can focus on her work and her art and her craft and let somebody else do the heavy lifting of the inventory management, the shows.
No, I do all the shows.
Well, you go to the shows, but I mean, and you do help set up too. So, but you don't get any relief from that.
I do help set up. I don't always help set up. Sometimes I roll in right beforehand. But Chris and I, before we do a show, we talk about how we're going to set up and we brainstorm what the best way to make the flow, because as we all know, our room is, a lot.
Your room is huge. And so do you even know off the top of your head, and I didn't ask you this beforehand, so I hate to put you on the spot, but how many artists are in 19 artists in the
around 19. Some lines are bigger than others. Some are very small. But they're about 19, but we're going to mix it up at market this time. So everybody's going to have a little bit more of a different experience. We are leaving the ballrooms.
Stop.
Yeah, we are moving back to the floor.
How fun.
Yes, which is what we used to do. And then we just got too big to be in, 2 adjoining hotel rooms. Sure. So now we have, I think 4 rooms. So we'll have two adjoining in two different locations, like on two different floors.
Wowzer.
We're
That's
really
gonna make my buyer head spin.
I know. Well, no. The idea is that we're trying to make it a little less overwhelming when you walk in to see us.
A little more boutique, it sounds like.
A little bit more. It's for a new shop owner, we're a lot. We're a lot for a regular shop owner. And it's hard to see everything, and it's hard to know where to start and where to finish and how to walk through, and it's just overwhelming. So we are going to try to lighten that feeling of overwhelm and make it a little bit smaller and sort of do it that way this time. So we'll see how it works.
This podcast reaches people in all different segments of the needlepoint industry. So just for people who are just your average stitcher who are tuning in, what Kristine's referring to is the way that we buy needlepoint as shops and as retailers of the wholesale lines. And so she's talking about how, and Melissa and I have done podcasts about this in the past, and I'm sure we'll probably use the upcoming market as fodder for a future podcast. But in general, what Kristine's referring to is that the needlepoint industry is kind of a smaller mom and pop industry. And so our buying experience is different from those of like the big gift shops. So we have little is the wrong word, but it's a hotel room style. So in other words, you're, as a designer, your hotel room is sort of like your little storefront. And when you have a line as large as Chris Lewis or people like Kate Dickerson or the Meredith collection, they use these much larger ballroom spaces. And so what Kristine is explaining is that they're going to kind of use a different way to sort of market their business here. That's exciting.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be interesting.
So let's dial it back even further. So I just explained that Chris Lewis is your distributor, but I don't think that's always been the case. So take us all.
It has always been the case. Yes,
it has.
So it has. Chris, when I started my wholesale line, I had been working at a shop and met.
Which one? Tell us.
I worked at a store that's no longer in existence.
Oh, bummer. Okay.
And I had a lovely owner who was very nice, and we went to market and she let me do I had a lot of free reign. And I met a designer named Judy Kirchmeyer of Needle Diva. And she was just such a delight. She was such a hoot. She was so funny. And we just became friends, and we bought a lot from her and this, that, and the other. And then she, I guess, had come to the shop, and I was busy fixing some custom belt that we got in that was wrong. So I started painting them, and that's how I started doing this. I started correcting things that we had come that were not right. And I started with belts. And she said, "You should do a line." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "You should do a wholesale line." I'm like, "I don't even know where to begin." She goes, "Just paint some belts and come to market with me." And I'm like, "Okay." So about, I want to say maybe 2 months before market, I had like 15 belts. They're all still in my line. And she's like, called with it. And we would get on the phone, and she lived in Colorado and I'm in Maryland. And we would spend literally 3 or 4 hours on the phone talking whenever we got on the phone. It was never a quick phone call. And we talked about absolutely everything in life. And she was just wonderful. And she called and she goes, "Guess what?" I said, "What?" She goes, "I hired this guy." I'm like, "A guy to do what?" And she goes, "All the stuff we don't want to do." I said, "Well, what do you mean? I don't know what I'm doing. So what is it that I don't want to do?"
That I don't want to do. Yeah.
And she's like, "The painting houses, the inventory, packing and shipping the trunk shows." I'm like, "Wow, you're getting ahead of yourself. I have 15 belts."
Yeah, right.
Like, "Just trust me, you're going to want this." I'm like, "Okay, great." She goes, "I hired him. He's really nice. His name's Chris." I'm like, "Okay, great." I go to market. I meet Chris. Well, long story short, Chris's wife owns Pocketful of Stitches.
Right.
To dial it back even further, when I learned to stitch a long time ago, and I come from a family of makers, and before I started working in a store, I knew how to basket weave, and I had done cross stitch, so I knew some of the basic decorative stitches that cross over. But I signed up for Christmas every year. I got a club from Pocketful of Stitches, which is now owned by Megan, Chris's wife, who used to pack my stuff and send it to me when she just worked in the store a million years ago. So it's sort of like full circle. I learned all this stuff, and I'm still part of the Pocketful of Stitches world in a, auxiliary way.
That illustrates the point that this needlepoint industry is rather small when you really.
Oh, it's very small. Very, very small.
About what year was that when you were beginning to sign those first 15 belts?
The first 15 belts, I think, were in like 2011 or 12, I think 2012. Chris and I celebrate our 10-year anniversary last year.
Oh, how fun.
Yes. So Chris and so Judy from Needle Diva and I were Chris's first artist as a distributor.
Got you. And so,
Oh.
so that's so cool. I did not know that actually.
Yeah.
So, his business has grown, as has yours.
Yes.
You now have more than 15 belts.
Yes, I do. I have 1,000. Not
Okay.
all belts, but
Well,
I think I have 1,000 pieces in the line.
so each individual like SKUs.
Yes.
Wow. I didn't realize it was that large. That's amazing.
It's a lot bigger than people realize, but I mean, there's some things that are multiple colorways, but they each get their own number.
Right.
So they count, even though
Right.
they're just a colorway.
Right.
But I mean, we're in the throes of building a website because it's been something that's been on my list for, a million years, but I only have 2 hands and they spend all day painting.
They spend their, as you say, they spend their time with a paintbrush.
They
So
spend their time with a paintbrush. So we have a little website building going on in the other room here.
good.
And I was sitting down trying to do categories. And Tony looks at me and he's like, well, how many categories are there? I'm like, a lot. And he goes, I said, no, there are more. I said, and then they all have subcategories.
Oh my
So
God.
it's a daunting task when you have that many pieces in a line.
You just referred to Tony. And so for people
I
who
did.
don't know, that is your husband, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you also have a couple of children, I think.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
I have a soon to be 26-year-old and I have a recent college grad. So
Very good. So I just didn't want people to say, who's Tony? This,
yeah, I know. No, he's the behind the scenes help also.
Got you. So so you are at the beach helping to do a website and all these things. And so the line has obviously grown.
Mhm.
And so I'm trying to think of, so when I think of Kristine Kingston, some of the designs that pop into my head are belts. In fact, it's funny, when I was walking back here, I was kind of looking around the store to remind myself, what do we have? We have just recently sold a whole bunch of your clutches. So you have a lot of
Yep.
clutches in the
I have
mix.
a lot of clutch. I have a lot of everything.
You do. The other thing I think about are those love signs.
Yep, I have the love signs.
The love with the tennis ball and the love with the pop.
With the field hockey stick and the lacrosse stick and
Everything.
and then there's like a little heart with the collegiate stuff. I mean, people start, and then, I forgot about that one. There are a lot of,
did I?
I know, it's really funny. The love is a category on the website because I'm like, I have a lot of those things. We should jump them there.
Right.
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of coastal stuff, obviously, because I'm a water person. There are a lot of 4-inch and 3-inch squares and rounds that fit into a plethora of self-finishing items.
Yep.
And they range a lot of geometrics. I love geometrics. A lot of things that turn into single belts, like the one you just got a bunch of, that were part of something else. They started as a single design on a custom belt of somebody who wanted just, a million icons. I paint those I paint at least a couple of those every single week.
So I'm gonna
say, a lot of times that's where some things grow from. Is somebody asks me, "Oh, can you do a turkey?" I'm like, "Sure." I'm like, "Oh, I should do a turkey belt. I should do a turkey shoot belt."
So we at Market is a cool place, and I've said this a lot of times before. Market is a cool place because not only do you go to buy, you also go to collaborate and build some camaraderie among your fellow friends in the industry. And so it's not all fun and games. It's shopping, and it's
a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of networking.
But there's a lot of thinking and collaborating.
Oh, yeah.
We're in the Chris Lewis distributing room, and Kristine's like, "Oh, hey, look, I got this belt and I got this one." And I was like, "Yeah, I don't." And no offense, I'm not getting political here, but I'm just not don't like guns. But I'm just not a gun person.
Me either.
This darling turkey belt that had a turkey, and then I think it was a turkey hunting belt. So then
it was a turkey shoot belt. So it was a turkey and a gun for a turkey shoot.
And I was like, "Can we do some turkeys?" And you were like, "Sure." So out came the turkey belt, and Kristine, I think we've sold at least a dozen of these at this point, maybe.
That's good.
But my point in bringing that up is that, and by the way, this is the signature on most of Kristine's pieces, and it's pretty iconic.
Or some variation of that, because I don't actually sign all my. I try. Well, when I go to market and the box arrives the night before market, I do spend the entire market sitting there signing my canvases. But Chris has a couple of delightful girls who work for him who have got my signature mastered.
Oh,
and
nice.
They also sign my pieces. And sometimes they do it better because they spell my name right. When I'm going really fast, I have a tendency to not spell my name properly. because
Maybe
I'm
we
just
need
going
to
too
like
fast.
bring it down and just do 2Ks or something, but either way, my point is that one of the things I think about when I think about Kristine Kingston designs is your ability to be flexible and
Mhm.
to accept new ideas and say, oh yeah, I can do that.
I like doing that.
Well, and there are some people who design on a computer and are not painters. There are some people who design with stitching and are not painters. But you are one of these who I believe your process is pen.
Graph paper, pencil and graph paper.
Oh, so you do. So you start.
Oh
That's
yeah.
what I was going to ask. So you start with a graph paper,
I
and
start with pencil and 18 count graph paper, so itty bitty graph
okay.
paper.
So you have.
And hold on, I've got a whole stack of stuff here. Hold on.
Yeah, grab it. I'd love to see. I think it's fun to discuss everyone's process because, as we know, in every artistic avenue, people, their process and the way that they come about developing designs is different. And so yours
So
is.
this is something that's going out to a store next week.
Oh,
They're Burgess. And I sit and I look at it, and one's Ocean Reef Club. But I still sketch on this old-fashioned graph paper with a pencil
then do you
and an eraser.
You use that as your chart then for paint?
And then I paint it. Actually, I do this. And then because it really is beneficial to do things on a computer, since Chris lives in Texas and I live here.
I got you.
He and I speak via program. So we have a program that I'm guessing not too many other people use. It is forever and a day old. Judy used it. That's how old it is. And so it's old. It's not one of the new fun, things that everybody's learned how to use. This one's ancient, and I probably don't know how to use it as well as I should, but it works.
It works.
So I put it on here, and then I take it to the computer and I put it in the way I've done it. And then I start painting it, and I tweak it as I paint it. And then I go back and tweak it again on the files for the computer, and then it's done. So it's a 3-part process.
So then to ease the communication sort of burden.
And then I email it.
So then he gets an email with the file and then is able to send it off for reproduction. So.
And then he sends it off to the painting house. Yep.
So now something that we were discussing here at the shop too, that I imagine is also part of your language with Chris, is I don't think a lot of people realize that the DMC colors are sort of a color language for painters.
Yes, they are. And I have the chart that has the actual thread on it.
Yep.
And I pick my colors and I match my paint because I do paint, I still mix some colors, and then I have to find the right DMC shade.
Right.
And then he yells at me when I go to market, and I'm like, that's not the right blue. Because you're the only one that knows that.
I said 826 blue. I did not say 825.
Friends, I mean, things come back, and because I have a distributor, I don't actually get my inventory.
Got you.
So the only time I get to hang out with my canvases, although I do keep a few around so that if I have can you come pop in and bring some canvases? I don't show up empty-handed.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have a mini, I don't even want to say a trunk show. I have a bag. I have like one of those reusable bags with canvases in it. But I see something come to, I'll pick something up at market and I'm like, it's the wrong green. It's not lime, because it's fine. I'm like, it doesn't look like what I see in my head. And he goes, let it go. He goes, the customer doesn't know that. I said, but they should.
Yeah.
Because I am a big color person. Color is really, 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 really important to me in my design and how I pick things in my house and what I wear and the art that I hang in my house. Color speaks to me. So I like it to be done right. And I have learned I have to let some of that go.
I understand that, especially as an artist. And what I think is interesting in needlepoint, different from some other forms of needle art, is that the canvas very often directs the stitcher. So like, for example, if you're looking at a charted pattern, you can choose whatever you want and there's nothing on the canvas. But, we have people who come in all the time and they'll say, hey, can you help me find a white background? And we'll say, why don't you make it blue or green or striped? And they're like, I never thought of that. So to your point, I think that there's a lot of directive that comes from what you put on canvas.
There is, which leads to why there are certain things in my line that come in 10 different colorways. Because when I say to somebody, just change the color,
Like, I can't do
They
that.
look at me like I've got three heads. And I'm like, you don't have, just because I want this to be blue and green doesn't mean you can't change that blue and green to be more hunter or more this or that. It doesn't have to be. Lime green is one of my favorite colors. It's a neutral in my world. It goes with everything. But not everybody has that same, love of lime green that I do.
I got you. So it sounds to me like you do derive a lot of inspiration from color and color pairing. But where else are you kind of collecting inspiration?
Oh, I knew this question was going to come up.
It's always one of the nowhere.
It's not nowhere. It's always one of the most difficult because people ask me all the time, where'd you get the idea? And I'm like, I don't know. I was standing in my shower.
Yep.
A lot comes to me. I keep a pad of paper pretty much in every room. I have a pad of paper in my car. And I know I have a phone and I could write this down, but I like to write with pen and paper because I remember things more when I write them as opposed to when I type them.
Same.
So I keep a pad in my kitchen. I keep a pad in the bathroom. I keep a pad, in my living room, and random things will come to me because I'll hear a commercial on TV and I'll think, oh, I should do that. Or I see somebody wearing something. I'm like, oh, I like that combo. I like that, the way that works together. I spend a lot of time outside at the beach. I spend a lot of time in the mountains. I am an absolute water person. So a lot comes from just sitting and staring into water, believe it or not.
I used to
cathartic thing.
When I very first started doing this podcast, I used to do like rapid fire. And one of the questions was, what's your favorite, how did I say it? Natural resource, I think. So like, I like to look at fire. I love to look at a fire. Some people like to look at mountain ranges or like.
I do that too.
But you like water.
All of it because I grew up with both. My family has a house on the lake, so I spent a significant amount of time doing that, and it's a very different vibe from the beach. But I also turned around and spent a lot of time at the beach as a kid, and I to this day will I take my dog out to swim in the morning, and while he's fetching the ball and swimming, I'm picking up itty bitty teeny tiny shells to put in a garlic jar to sit on my desk when I'm not here because I like that. I like the fire. I like snow. I walk in the woods. I think just being outside is what does it. And
natural nature, I think, inspires people.
Well,
it clears their head.
It allows your mind to wander.
Mm-hmm.
It takes you away from everything that's sitting in your house that has to be done, like laundry and dishes and vacuuming and dusting and.
The bummer. So tell me this. So you mentioned that you spent some time growing up at a lake. So at what age did you begin stitching? Do you remember?
I did a lot of different things as a kid. I was very creative. I painted. I won an art contest when I was 7. I won our local art fair because my grandfather was a lawyer and it was happening in the courthouse square. And he called and he's like, bring some stuff. So I did. I brought some stuff. I hung it on a fence. We went out to lunch and we went and got lemons with peppermint sticks in them. And I came back and I had a blue ribbon. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. And I still have it.
Lemons and peppermint sticks?
Yes, lemons and peppermint sticks. That's a Baltimore thing. It is so good.
I don't get it.
The peppermint it's a peppermint stick that's about this big and it is somewhat hollow and you can suck the lemon juice through the peppermint stick. It's amazing. I know it's a local thing. It's very cool.
We need to talk about that at market because I
maybe I'll see if I can find some and I'll bring some.
I might have to experience that.
It's really good. So I started stitching probably as a teenager. I started doing cross stitch because my mom was doing it. But I said I came from a family of makers. My great grandmother's sister was a dressmaker and owned a boutique back in the early 1900s.
My gosh.
My grandmother was a seamstress because she wanted clothes that she couldn't find. So she worked with a dressmaker and had most 90% of her wardrobe was made to order. It was crazy to me. She had ultra suede skirts in every color of the rainbow with a matching jacket. And then my mother smocked and my mother stitched and my grandmother embroidered. And I sort of did all of it and I cross stitched. And then when I got pregnant with my first child, I was put on bed rest. And I literally did not know what I was going to do with myself because I couldn't really work. It was not, there's no work from home then. You didn't really have a laptop. I mean, those were not things either. I had a big monitor on my desk. So I had to find something to do with myself for about a month. And I'm like, I can't just watch TV. I probably could, but there was only so much Price is Right I could watch. So I got a painted canvas.
R.I.P. Bob Barker, by the way.
I know, I do, but that was like my childhood sick day. It was awesome.
Same.
And it was the way I learned how much stuff cost.
Yeah.
And I always had a guess, and it was like my favorite thing. But so I went home, I got a painted canvas. Actually, I went to a store to get a painted canvas and they were not very nice to me.
Oh.
And I can remember walking out and thinking, So I bought blank canvas, and I had been to Nantucket and I had a Claire Murray book of patterns.
Oh, cool.
And I counted one of her patterns onto needlepoint. I did the entire thing in basket weave going the wrong direction.
Oh, funny. Yes. Yes.
That was my first piece, but it was like, it's like a 12 by 12 counted piece of, different houses on Nantucket and things. It's really cool. I mean, it still sits in my living room, but the entire thing is going the wrong way.
So are you left-handed?
No.
Huh?
I don't know. I just did it the wrong way.
Didn't know what you didn't know.
I didn't know what I didn't know. And then I'm like, oh, wow, it's all wrong. But that's okay. It's aged very well because I did the entire thing on, I think it's on 13 mesh. I used the fat DMC pearl. Yep. It was just, but it's held up amazing. And it's been sitting on the sofa for 26 years.
So if you don't mind my going down a tiny rabbit hole regarding what you said, because I love that this podcast offers the opportunity to educate people. And particularly when I'm talking to a person who designs canvases, I like to bring this up. So when you say I did it the wrong way, right?
Yes.
So we like to say here, there are no needlepoint police. There's not a right way. There's not a wrong way. There's not a this, there's not a that, but there are. And needlepoint designers design canvases so that the stitches go bottom left to upper right in the intersection. Yes. So that when the stitching is done, so there's thought that is behind that. You want to?
Yes, there is thought behind that. And what I did was basically basket weave just going the opposite direction, which is great. If you have a line going down a canvas so that you don't look like stair steps, you do turn it and put it down that way, which is fine. And while there are no rules and there are no needlepoint police, I'm going to be the first one to say there are rules. And you need to know them before you break them, because it does sometimes have an effect on how your piece turns out.
That's exactly right. So, so again, no one's going to shame you, but it is
no. But I think you need to know that, when you don't work on a frame, and there are plenty of people that don't work on a frame, your piece doesn't look like this before you send it off. It sometimes is, a little skewed. And when you're doing decorative stitches in Krynic, that's not a forgiving thread. You can only block it so much.
Right. That's right.
But I think things like that, I don't think people realize that there are reasons why people do things on frames. There are reasons why we like things on frames. Right. Because it makes everybody else's job a little bit easier, and you end up with a slightly better finished product.
That's exactly right. That's exactly the point. So
but everybody has to do, and there are plenty of people who just can't stand the idea of holding a frame. Right. I cross-stitched forever, so I was always on, some kind of a hoop to hold the fabric taut.
Right.
So for me, it was no big deal to switch over, and I do it. But I've been known to not stitch on a frame. It happens.
I have one right here that I didn't not stitching on a frame. And you don't have tape. You don't have, and I'm like,
oh, I don't own tape.
It's fine.
Tape.
By the way, this is not your design, so I did not intend to be part of it.
But I like it. It's one of yours.
Not part of the conversation. It's just that it's wonky. But so I know that you have different, well, you were talking about categories earlier, right? Mm-hmm. So you have things that are kind of year round, and then you have things that are seasonal. So hold up. So you have a whole series of these ugly Christmas sweaters. Isn't that what you call them?
They're not ugly. They're cute. I don't do ugly. There are other people that do ugly Christmas sweaters. There are. I don't do
yours are just cute Christmas sweaters. Okay.
Mine are cute and classic.
That's darling, actually.
Not ugly.
And you know what? Didn't someone do a series of those, the beach ones? Like a club? There's
a club going on, but they're not, this was not chosen for the club.
Okay.
Which is fine. I mean, this is the club that came because Neil from Needlepoint Lane walked in and said, oh, we should do these. I'm like, okay, fine, we can do them. Like, what do you want to do? She's like, well, I don't know. What do you want to do? I'm like, just pick 6. It's fine. Like, start with 6. Do whatever. Yep. She's like, well, then what do you do? And I'm like, well, I'll go home and stitch them all, and then I'll write you stitch guides for them. So, I'm one of those people. There are a lot of people that ask me, do you have minimums? I'm like, no. Do you have to do this? I'm like, you don't have to do anything. My goal is to put needlepoint in people's hands. I don't want to make you buy 6 because I really don't like to see stuff on sale. And I know everybody loves a sale. As a designer, I'm like, did somebody not like it?
Is that why it's on?
Did you buy something and you're now stuck with it? Because then I feel guilty. And I know I should never feel that way, but I do, because you've invested time and money into me, which I greatly appreciate, because you're my income stream. You're my only income stream.
Yes.
And then I feel like you've got something that didn't sell, and it's like, God, is she going to buy again?
Yeah.
But these are the things that keep me up at night.
Well, and frankly, it keeps me up at night just determining what to buy and what to bring in the store. And
well, yeah, it's hard.
And my point was, so you've got Christmas things, you've got
I've got Christmas, I have Easter light bulbs, I have Halloween stuff. I mean, I have Halloween pillows. I have some Halloween ornaments.
And so we buy for our customer in the store.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting about what has happened during the pandemic and since is that our customer is like
everywhere.
My customer is a collective customer for all the shops, for all, so it's more interesting to buy indeed. Now, like we typically don't buy a lot of coastal, a lot of beach,
right,
because we're in the Midwest.
We're in the middle of nowhere. I can't sell a belt west of the Mississippi.
Isn't that funny? And so we are belt heavy.
Right. Some stores are belt stores. Other stores, we're looking at a list of stores. I'm like, oh, I don't sell out there. And it's like, why not? I said, because it's Arizona. Like coastal doesn't go in Arizona.
Coastal doesn't work in Arizona.
Things. And I don't have Southwest. I don't appeal to a Southwest audience. And you can't, I really can't be everything to everybody. I try. Well, but there's some things that just don't speak to me, and cactus and Southwest is not my vibe.
Not your jam. But what is your jam
East Coast
is Halloween. So let's talk about how fancy you are this month.
I am fancy this month. So and what is so funny is Halloween is my least favorite holiday.
Oh, that's funny.
It's hilarious. And they're two of my best-selling campuses.
So what's funny is that Melissa, my pal at the Wool and the Floss, we do this podcast together. She and I have both collectively determined that we don't really like Halloween as a holiday, but we both really like Halloween stitching because the colors are fun and the creatures are fun. And so look at that trim. Oh, that's beautiful.
This is ribbon that's been pleated.
Oh, cool. And then sewn into the seam there. Oh, how pretty.
Yep, it's black on the back. But it's got an extra thing of piping. It's got it's got a row of piping around the center. I was trying to see if the black was piping, but that's actually a border I put on there. I couldn't remember.
So what I'm referring to here, in case anyone's not familiar, is there is indeed still a print magazine for our industry. It really is one.
Yes.
I'm actually sitting
here.
There's
one dedicated to needlepoint.
So there's Needle Pointers, which is the A&G magazine, but the Needlepoint Now is available to anyone. I shouldn't say most because I don't know. Many shops, we receive these in the mail and we sell them here in the store. But what Needlepoint Now is a dedicated print magazine for our craft. And so you'll find a lot of charts, you'll find a lot of advertisements.
There's usually a counted piece. Because not everybody does a painted canvas. It's, it can be cost prohibitive. And I think one of the nice ways there's this whole debate on affordable needlepoint.
Well, there's kind of a movement to get the word out about how to have needlepoint accessible to a lot.
And I think one of the ways there are some really amazing artists that do charted work.
Yep.
And I am a huge fan. I always have a charted piece going in my.
Do you?
I do. I'm always working on a charted piece.
Charts are very cool, and and we don't need to go down again this rabbit, but I appreciate you bringing it up because there are charted pieces from people like Kathy Reese and others who do color theory, and then there are charted pieces where it's like do whatever color you want.
Right. The little leaves that seem to be on there. And now in this particular issue, there's a sunflower, which I think is really cool. And I think that's something that people could adapt. If you don't want a sunflower, you could change the colors and just do any kind of flower you want to do.
That's exactly right. So we are here advocating for this print magazine, but we're not here to only advocate for this print magazine. We are here because Kristine is featured on the back cover.
Which is a big deal.
It is a big deal. It's amazing. And so I want to talk about this piece. So I'm trying to find what page this is on. Are we right in the center here or no? Nope.
Fine, fine.
Anyway, I don't want to belabor the point here, but if anybody's interested in this magazine, I believe you can order it direct from Needlepoint now, maybe.
I think you can.
But
You can, but there are a lot of stores that have it and they have it in stock to be able to sell it.
exactly. So ours is one, I think probably Melissa's is also. But the point is, so you can get this canvas from any local needlepoint shop. It can be ordered through Chris Lewis Distributing. And Kristine has provided a beautiful stitch guide.
With lots of fun things that you don't always use, like little flat sequins.
Oh, fun.
I
See that on there?
Yeah, they didn't come through. And then they're like the beads on three of the bats are hex beads, which are different from the beads that are in the stitches. The hex beads are more rectangular.
Awesome.
And less round.
Find it, Kristine. Is there an article about it too? I'm so sorry.
There is. It's on chart page 22.
Here it is. Found it. So there is Kristine Kingston Stitch Guide and Stitching.
But yeah, you get a whole stitch guide.
It's amazing. And so all you have to do is buy this magazine for, I think we sell it for $9.
Yep.
And look it, you get all this information. So it's great.
You get a lot of projects.
You'd get a lot of projects. But one thing that I wanted to mention in bringing this up, well, there's a couple things. Number one is that you have been stitching for
a long time.
Designing, I've been standing for like 12 years designing, 10, 12. But you are really a beautiful stitch guide writer and stitcher. And so I think sometimes it's interesting for people to find out. One of the reasons why we do this podcast is to learn more about the people in the industry. But there are a lot of people who either don't stitch, a lot of designers who either don't stitch or who are just not into like teaching and decorative stitching. But
I love to teach.
You do. I was about to say that. So you're doing some traveling.
I like to teach. I miss being in a shop. I mean, if there was a way I could do both, I'd do both. I do like being in a shop. I do like, I love pulling canvas threads. And when I pop into places, I frequently just go to work. I pull threads for people. And when I worked in a shop a long time ago, we used to write stitch guides on the fly. So I would have somebody walk in with a piece and they're like, oh, I want to write a stitch guide. And I'm like, okay. And I had like 30 minutes. So I would get a piece of paper and just pull out. I'm like, what books do you have? And they're like, well, I don't have this. I'm like, well, you should buy this because then I can pick stitches from it.
We do a lot of that here too. A lot of
and I think books are good resources for people. I think there's a lot you can get from books. But when you open those books and you see fun big stitches, sometimes there's nowhere to use them, which is why I designed stripes so that you can use fun big stitches.
And so that was the first thing I wanted to say is you are a teacher and you are taking this show on the road. But the second thing I wanted to say is you've got a complimentary piece to Spooky, which is Boo, right?
Which is Boo.
There.
Which when I was getting ready to actually make it into a pillow, I realized I forgot to bead the ghost eyes. So that still has to happen. But again, it's, there are a lot of fun stitches. The threads glow in the dark. I've taught this class twice and I've had people message me and they're like, this is the best stitch guide. We don't even need you. I'm like, that's the point of a stitch guide. Sometimes you don't need me there.
As I'm looking at this stitch guide on the back cover, it appears to be maybe a like slightly beginner plus. I don't think it's like, it's not.
No, it's not. I'm not Kelly Clark.
Well,
yeah, I am not Kelly Clark. I love Kelly Clark, but I could sit with her I keep telling her, I'm like, you need to come visit me for like a week so that we can just sit and you can just teach me stuff.
Her fingers just do things that other people's fingers do. And like,
I could do a lot of that, but that's a lot of time. And when I'm doing something like this, I need to be able to stitch it in a week.
So my point was that this is, it's
not a total beginner because there is a lot of counting, which people think, oh, that's easy. It's counting through things because there are breaks there are breaks in both of these pieces where the top kind of has to match the bottom. Right. And the only way to get there is to count. And it's painstaking, but there is no other choice.
Which is another advocation for backgrounds first. I love
absolutely. Oh yeah, because you can count through things. Because somebody's like, why are the words last? I'm like, because I need to be able to see through them.
That's right.
So I always do the background first. I mean, for something like this, I always do the background first. It just flows better.
Yes, and I just think these pieces are super fun. They're accessible and they're great. But
Oh, yeah.
do you have anything on the books? Like, are you going somewhere to teach any of these? Do you have anything on the books right
I
now?
have nothing. I'm going to Dallas. That's my big trip. Going to Frisco. I haven't. I tend to not travel in the summer. That's something I don't go teach in the summer. It's a winter thing for me.
And so, in addition to that, my next question was going to be, are shops doing anything with your campuses right now? So I know you said, is the sweater club happening?
The sweater club is happening at Emily's Stitchery and Needlepoint Lane. I have something cooking for October with Patty.
Oh, cool.
That's
That.
yeah, Patty at Stitch Sesh. We've done something the last couple of Octobers. So we're doing something for breast cancer because it's near and dear to her heart. And I like it. I like doing things with her because she's a very dear friend of mine. So we've got a little something cooking for October. Other than that, I'm just trying to keep up with the list. The
So
list is never ending.
Are headed into what I think we kind of like to call like the big fall market.
We
season.
are.
So do you have new designs launching?
I do. Lots.
You do? Awesome.
I do. I have lots of new things. I have finally, much to Chris's like excitement, gotten to the point where I designed for it. I'm at least a market ahead of where I used to be. I used to, when I first started doing this, I rolled into market with canvases with probably wet paint on them.
Yeah.
And we'd throw them on the wall and then we'd order stuff. And back in the day when you could order things and you could get them in a really timely fashion, that was not a big deal. That obviously went away in COVID. And I think I had at least 30 sweaters at the last market. Plus I had baby stuff. Plus I had belts. So I generally roll into market with around 50 new pieces every market.
You said baby stuff. I'm sitting right by our baby stuff.
I know.
On the wall behind me. Hold on.
I know you. I think you had a couple of them, but I think it's sold. You had a baby because I did one with you in mind. I did a blue gingham background with there it is with the bunnies up at the top.
Bunny, the yellow. Yeah, up there.
You have yellow up in the corner there. Yeah. So there are a few more. There's some more baby stuff coming out. There's one particular little thing that I love that is coming out in a lot of different variations.
Fun.
Because I tend to, when I like something, I tend to make it work in a lot of different things. There are a bunch of new clutch sizes.
I was just about to say, so an example of that would be this geometric pattern that you shared.
Yes.
So that comes in
it comes in a clutch to fit Rachel Berry's bag. It comes in a belt. It comes in a hat band. It comes in a purse strap. It comes in a round. And my idea with these, which I think people sometimes don't think about, while this is plain and lovely, you can put your initials on this.
Oh, indeed. 100%.
And I don't think everybody thinks about that, but that's part of the reason I designed geometrics the way I do, so that a store can pop on a hot pink set of initials on this.
I was just about to say hot pink would be amazing on that. That's so funny. Or orange would be cute too.
Or something like that. But I mean, I do that. So I've got, there's another design that's coming out this fall that I'm going to try to stitch between now and October, along with everything else that has to be done.
You should see my desk. It's these, I'm going to have this stitched for later this fall.
I am really lucky that I have a very, very, very dear friend of mine who sold her house in COVID because it was a good time to sell. And she put everything in storage. And her needlepoint is in the very back of the storage unit.
Oh man, so she needs some living.
She is still living in a rental. So she comes to me, she goes, do you have anything I can stitch? I mean, you could buy something. She goes, can I just stitch something for you? Do you have anything for me? I'm like, I do. I have a purse strap and it's pretty colors. So I just handed that off to her last week because she needs something to do. She'll do it in about 4 weeks. If I had to stitch a 36-inch purse strap, I might have it 3 markets from now.
Give yourself a break. As you said earlier, there are only so many things that these 2 mitts can do. They can have brushes, they can have web tech development, they can have
they focus solely on painting because that's what people need. People don't need to see my purse strap. Therefore, it's always at the bottom of the list.
Yeah. Oh, yours on your own body. I see what you're saying.
Right. Yeah. My kids get excited if they get a Christmas ornament, like the same year, or like most of the time now. It started with they got one that was finished, and then it became they got it was stitched, but it wasn't finished. Then they got it was painted, it wasn't even stitched. And now they just get told the idea that I think I might try to do. So I'm going to one day give them a box of all the backdated ornaments I owe them. And Ella keeps saying, well, Mom, I have a house, I have an apartment now. It's big enough I can have a Christmas tree. Maybe I could have my stuff. And I'm like,
yeah, about that. You better get your
you can have
house
something.
situated.
I picked a selection for her last year, and she goes, you gave me all the ones I don't like. I said, I know, I kept all the ones I like on the tree.
Here's a hot tip. Put a couple stitches in it and then pass it on to your friend. And then you can say,
That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. And she's very generous. She's an amazing basket weaver. I can't give her a lot of decorative stitches, but she's an amazing, you turn the canvas over and you can't tell the front from the back.
Those people are amazing. The
And
tension.
I'm just in awe. Mine don't, my backs, this one looks kind of like that, but only because of the colors, but my backs, I'm trying to find another back. My backs are kind of messy, like the thread that goes from there all the way over.
Same, especially when you're switching colors, and that's just the way it goes. You had another piece there before we started. Show them the other one that you're working on, which I love that one.
This is a really fun piece. This is a Bargello stitch that is really difficult to count, believe it or not, because it moves and it's not, I've stitched it on an angle. Now that I'm at the bottom, I'm just kind of going straight across because I can't, it's hard. I'm worried that I'm not going to make it the right way. So I've just got it all the way to the bottom, and now I can just go through the letters.
Yep, that's exactly. I have a piece like that too, and it's actually really fun, but it also makes your mind.
This is not something I do when I want to relax. This is work.
That's
but
right.
It's but I like it, and it's going to be really cool. And she's going to have sequins on her, like when she's done. She's going to have sequins and beads and.
So I think I probably know the answer to this question because I think we've just determined it. But since you have very little time to stitch, my guess is you focus mostly on your own designs. I was just about to say, so who do you like to stitch? What other designers?
Susan Roberts Nutcrackers.
Oh yeah.
I love Susan Roberts Nutcrackers. I probably have more than you have in the store. If I put my stash on a wall, I could fill your store, is my guess. I stitch a lot of Susan Roberts. I like Blue Ridge Stitchery. I love Pages Mountains because I have a daughter that went to Virginia Tech, and I did that drive forever and a day. So those mountains speak to me as well. That's currently on bars, and I have all the threads, and I have stitches picked out, and I've got like one stitch in it, and then I had to put it aside because I have homework to do. This is homework to me.
Yes.
So I'm stitching these to get those done. But I've got a belt going from Susan Roberts also because I want to make it into a napkin tray.
Oh, cool.
I'm stitching something from Judy and Company. I've got her big flamingo with all the squares. I mean, I sort of go all over the place, I'm all over the place.
Whatever mood strikes you.
Yeah, well, I like a lot of Charlie Harper.
Oh, yeah. Of course. Out of the Meredith collection. Sure.
Yeah, I like a lot of Charlie Harper, but I'm also doing, I have two big Amanda Lockford pieces from Susie.
Oh, sure.
That I'm also working on. I mean, I've got, I can't die.
You are an equal opportunity designer.
Oh, I am. Absolutely. I buy from everybody. It's what's so funny is this is really the first stuff of my own I've stitched. I really don't. I just always choose somebody else's stuff because I'm like, I can always stitch my stuff. And it's funny. I mean, this is like, these things have forced me to, I wanted to have samples because I thought nobody's going to understand what these are. So I stitched these to have it market last spring. But, I did. And when I first did the boo piece, it was, I want you to teach. What can you teach? I'm like, I'll teach whatever you want me to teach. You pick.
Yeah.
She's like, well, it should be your canvas. I'm like, I'll teach somebody else's piece. I don't care. I'll teach whatever.
I love it. I love
that's how it started with Boo. And then when Andrea came in to do the magazine, she's like, I want you to do this piece. I'm like, okay, that's the piece I'll do then.
There we go. So I love your sentiment that it just makes you happy to be back in a store. But what I'm trying to figure out, and one question I forgot to ask you, is do you have any formal education, like higher education? So did you get an art degree, a teaching degree? Like, do you have
I wish I'd gotten an art degree. I wasn't allowed.
Same. My dad would have said.
My mother was not about that. And then when my daughter when it came time for it, she goes, do not make the same mistake. Let her go. I said, oh, she's going. No worries. I wasn't allowed to go. She's going. She's doing what I wanted to do.
So what is your education in?
Communications.
Communication. How funny.
It
I
was
was
easy.
expecting you to say like education or art or
I would
don't
love to.
mean
I would
for-
love to. I would love to have done art. My uncle was an artist, and he was, he was a painter, and he was a department chair for art at a small college in the South. But no, I wanted to go to New York. That's
And
what I wanted to do.
you grew up in
I lived in, I was a nomad. I was born in Baltimore. I lived on the main line for a while. I lived in Rochester, New York for 2 years, long enough to realize the sun doesn't come out and it snows too much. And I promptly left, and I really didn't go back. I went back one summer and worked for an ad agency that was just life changing. I worked for the coolest guy. He was a photographer. He was like, his passion was photography. That changed my outlook on everything. I was like, this would be cool. And then I went to school, and advertising doesn't pay. So I went to work at Brooks Brothers, because that was so fun. And I was on commission, and I did very well. It was really fun. And then it was time to get a real job. So I went into healthcare. I went into healthcare marketing, did that for a little while. And then I had a child, and I never went back. So.
Well, here's what I'm picking up. What you're putting down here is your collective experiences have all kind of helped you to frame the way that you're expressing your experiences in art,
Yeah.
and the way you're going out about teaching and kind of looking at the world. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a Renaissance approach. I know a lot about a little. I know a little bit about a lot of stuff.
There you go. I love it. Well, speaking of that, is there anything you haven't shared with the audience that you wanted to share about Kristine Kingston Designs or about your journey?
I don't know. I think one thing actually is that when I design, and I said this in the magazine, because this is something I think that's very important. I design for the very basic stitcher who doesn't want shading, who's intimidated by a lot of elements on a canvas and doesn't know how to handle it. If you basket weave my pieces, they look just as pretty as if you do a ton of stitches. Mm-hmm. So I sort of design with both people in mind. I don't want somebody to walk in, and I have a piece. I have a Melissa Shirley piece, and I tell this story every time I teach. It's a Mary Lake Thompson piece. I loved it. It did not bring me joy. It was very difficult for me to stitch. Yeah. It was very difficult for me to stitch. I tried. I threw it out.
Oh no.
Because I was tired of looking at it on bars and going, I can't get this right. This is too difficult. I literally took it off the bars. I saved the bars. I saved the little tacks, and I threw out the canvas. It was not an inexpensive canvas, but it was just one of those things. And it was very frustrating to me. And that was early on in my line. Mm-hmm. And I decided that and I'm up for any kind of a challenge. I don't give up very easily about anything. I'm very into working hard for whatever it is you want.
Yep.
But I decided that this is supposed to bring people joy. It is supposed to help people relax. It has got me through some very, very, very stressful times in my life. I always turn to stitching when I need to chill and when I need to bring it down a notch. And with that said, I don't want somebody to pick a canvas up and go, oh, I really like it, but it looks too hard. So, or I don't know decorative stitches, or I'm afraid to do that, or I really just like to basket weave with pearl cotton. Yep. Okay, that's fine. Everybody's got their thing. Yep. So so everything looks beautiful just the way it is, if all you want to do is that. But if you want to do decorative stitches, there's room to do it. There's a whole background. You can try something. And what I've been doing when I've been stitching these sweaters is I'm picking stitches that I haven't been able to use before because they don't fit anywhere. I'm like, oh, I like that. So I think it's fun to be able to have room to open a book and say that stitch looks fun, but it doesn't fit. So the stripes, all the striped canvases I do came out of that desire to open a book and pick a stitch I could not use on a nutcracker because I didn't have room.
What I'm hearing you say as a sidebar mm-hmm. is that if you've just started stitching, or if you're adding to your stash, get all the Kristine Kingston designs in your stash, because as a basket weave stitcher, there's a chance you might grow into decorative stitches, and you can stitch.
There are. And it's nice to be able to have a little bit of room to do that.
I agree.
Even on a small piece. So, again, white backgrounds on belts are not meant to be white. Another fun fact about my canvases, when you see a gray edge on something, it doesn't mean it's going to be gray. You can't paint white on white canvas. So I use gray. And
That's a
people,
common misconception.
for example, the Maryland crab that I do, and I have a Maryland crab, and there are parts of it that are painted gray because you can't paint in white. I've seen it stitched in gray. And I want to send a picture of what the Maryland flag looks like. It's white. It's not gray, it's white. But I can't stitch white, and I don't trust painting houses to take a little black line. And
oh yeah, that's tough. It's also tough to cover a black line sometimes.
it's tough to cover a black line. They might not get it right. It's much easier just to do it in gray because pretty much every color covers gray. Even white covers gray.
That's exactly right.
So that's why. So that's a fun fact. If you buy one of my canvases and you see gray, it's meant to be white. If it's a border. Fun fact.
I love the fun fact. That's why we're here.
Tidbits.
You know, this has been a really enjoyable conversation. I like I said at the beginning, I called you my friend because I do consider you an industry friend. And I want to end with one other really kind of cool thing that happened. I hope you don't mind. I'm bringing this up. I guess it was last week. Our mutual friend, Ann Fisher, was coming out with a design. And I'll be honest, I don't know if she wanted me to out myself or not, but I said, Ann, I've got something in the store from Kristine that looks a lot like that. And I was like, I hate to be the wet blanket, and I don't want to get involved in this, and this is none of my business, but I just feel like I need to give you a heads up. So I sent her the picture. Like, I kind of got nervous about it because I don't like that stuff, and I don't like people.
Nobody likes it.
Nobody likes it. But the two of you handled that conversation with grace and professionalism.
Well, Ann's a friend of mine. Ann's a friend of mine too. And she was funny. She called, she sent me a message. She's like, I need to talk to you about something. I'm like, give me like 15 minutes. I'm like, and I can't remember what I was doing. I'm like, I'm in the middle of something. I'll call you in a few minutes. So I called her back, and she's just like, oh, the worst things happened. I'm like, what are you talking about? So she sends it to me, and I'm like, I mean, I had seen it, and I'd been like, yeah, it's cool. And just, it's one of those things as I'm scrolling through, I'm like, rolling by it and didn't really pay that much attention to it. And she's like, it kind of looks like yours. I said, well, let me look. And again, this is when you have a lot in your line. I had to go and look at it. I'm like, oh yeah, it does look just like mine, doesn't it? And she's like, I'm so sorry. And I said, well, wait a minute. I said, do you have other stuff for market, or is this all, do you have other stuff? And she's like, yeah, why? I said, because if you don't have other stuff, we can make this work. Like, we'll make it work. Cause I'm not going to let you go to market if this is all you're bringing. I mean, if this is like the basis of your whole thing, I'm not going to do that. We'll figure something out. And she's like, you're so kind. I'm like, well, you're going to market. You got to sell stuff. And so she's like, she was like, what do you, I'm like, it looks like mine, but I mean, it's an evil eye. She's like, but it's exactly like yours. I said, I know. She goes, how about if I don't do it? I'm like, well, that's fine. I said, but let's do something together with it, because I like what you did and it is like mine, but maybe we can come up with something together. So that's what we're going to do. So she tabled it, and and I said, I hope they haven't been painted. I said, but if they've been painted, we can fix them with paint. So
because you are artists and
we're going to
do
professionals.
And
yes, it was nice. I think it's something that I think it's really hard. It's hard because it's hard to know what everybody does, because there's so many people.
And there's a lot of opportunity for Google image searching and a lot of whatever, but at the same time,
but that doesn't mean it's going to show. I mean, that's not an end all. Google is not, I mean, it's not the Bible of the universe.
But I also think that it's okay to admit that I, in error, didn't either do enough research or happen to just not find this, and say to another person, hey, look, I did this. I'm sorry. How do we work this out? And I think in a small industry like ours, which has, by the way, grown immensely in the past few years.
It's hard to keep up with. I mean, it's one thing to go to market and see what you see at market, but to be able to, I mean, not everybody sees everything that's on Instagram.
That's exactly right. And in addition to that, I said this to you when we spoke, there isn't like this catalog of places, like a place where you can go because it's all like emblazoned in one spot to check. There's not like a catalog of all the designs out in the world.
No.
At the same time, there is a respect that is deserved among someone.
And I've pulled something that we got back, and I'm like, it's uncanny, but I'm like, wow, I had no idea that was out there. So we've pulled it. And it's not going to hit the market.
I just appreciate that, because there are so many new stitchers, new designers, new distributors, new painters, that there can be a professional.
There should be. We're all
mature
adults.
discussion that can
Yes.
resolve in a way that is friendly, and you can go out and still both have your art, make money, and you know,
Yes,
away we go.
but I think that comes from, there's a level of, you know, Ann and I've known each other. I mean, I can remember when I met her at market, she's like, "Oh, I was so afraid to meet you." I'm like, "Why?" She's like, "You've been doing this so long." I'm like, "I'm so not that person. Um, I'm just not. That's not, it's just not me."
Yeah.
But I think picking up the phone and talking to people is a lost art. I don't think
Right.
enough people do it. I don't think enough people reach out when they see something. I mean, there are things that are out there that, and there's some things you're like, okay, I mean, it's close, but it's not really the same. It's similar, but yeah, whatever. But there are things that have been directly copied.
Yeah. It's a shame. It
And
happens, things
it
happen.
happens.
And but I just wanted to end on
Now,
that.
Ann and I had a lovely chat. We talked, and then we ended up on the phone for like an hour. Not about that stuff, but all kinds of other stuff. So,
Well,
but,
again, it was
but
just a
thank
nice
you.
way to resolve something. And I was not asking for an apology, or excuse me, any gratitude or thanks. I just
No,
wanted to bring up the situation because I think it's a very cool way that the two of you resolved that. So I appreciate that.
I think it works out. I mean, I think it'll be fun to collaborate with Ann.
I am excited. Two of my
Yeah,
favorite people. So,
yeah.
so
Who
I
knows what we'll do?
think that I think we may have concluded our
Okay.
interview with Kristine Kingston. What do you
Thank
think?
you for having me.
Well, listen, it was my pleasure, and I hope people have enjoyed this. If for some reason this is the first time that our viewer has seen the Pointing It Out podcast, please click. There's a subscribe button. What that does is it gives you a notification on your Google account that we've uploaded a new video, so that you'll continue to receive information about the needlepoint industry, the one that we all love, and that we continue
You
to.
love it.
That's
If
right.
you didn't love it, you wouldn't be in it.
That's exactly right. So thank you, Kristine. Have a
Thank you.
great rest of your day. And
Thank you.
thank you to you all for watching. Bye.
Look forward to seeing you.
Yeah.